Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. This story, it is so exciting that I myself have watched it 3 times. If you like this video, do not be lazy to like and subscribe to the channel. Enjoy watching. When I was 3 or 4 years old, my family often visited my cousin grandmother in the village. Her house was huge, with a sagging roof and peeling paint on the walls. Every creak of the floor sounded like ominous warnings that something was off in the house. Creaky floors and long shadows from the antique furniture made it resemble the set of an old horror movie. It seemed like every corner of the room held its secrets, and in the dark, one could hear an almost imperceptible whisper from the past. I had my own room there, a small but cozy one with a large window overlooking the garden. Everything seemed perfect. Fresh air, a vegetable garden, chickens running in the yard and pigs grunting in the pen. It was a place where I felt safe. Until one moment. One night, when it was time to go to bed, I noticed a strange doll on the shelf. It hadn't been there before, I was sure of that. The doll was old, dirty, covered in moldy stains and musty dust. It had no eyes, only empty black voids, where a cold glint seemed to flicker. The skin on its face was cracked, as if it had absorbed the very essence of fear. The doll emitted a faint odor of dampness and something rotten. Its mouth was slightly open, as if trying to say something. I felt uneasy. It seemed like the doll was watching me, tracking my every move. I tried to ignore it, lay down in bed, pulled the blanket up to my chin and tried to sleep. In the morning, the first thing I did was look at the shelf. The doll was there, but now it was facing the other way. I thought maybe my grandmother had moved it. But when I asked her about the doll and where it came from, she replied that she had found it several years ago under a burnt tree in the forest. The doll was half buried, with only its head sticking out of the ground. Grandma said that maybe it was just children playing around. Her words didn't calm me. On the contrary, they made me feel even more anxious. During the day, we worked in the garden, fed the animals, and in the evening we went to the bathhouse. I almost forgot about the doll. But when night came and I was back in my room, anxiety returned. Lying in bed, I caught a glimpse of something strange out of the corner of my eye. The doll turned its head. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, but I was sure. It was looking straight at me. My heart froze. I felt cold sweat trickling down my spine. Gathering all my strength, I turned away, pulled the blanket over my head, and squeezed my eyes shut. I tried to convince myself that it was just my imagination. At night, I woke up with a strange feeling, as if someone was standing nearby. I slowly opened my eyes and saw that the doll was right in front of my bed. Its empty black eye socket stared directly at me, as if peering into my very soul. I screamed, unable to contain my fear, and ran to my grandmother. Waking her, I incoherently explained what had happened. Grandma looked worried but tried to soothe me, saying it was just a dream. We went to my room together, but when we entered, the doll was still sitting on the shelf. There were no signs that it had moved. Grandma assured me once more that it was all in my imagination, but I knew it was real. The next morning, I asked Grandma about the doll again. She laughed and said that dolls cannot move. But something in her voice made me feel that she knew more than she was letting on. Perhaps it was a barely noticeable tremor in her tone, as if she were trying to hide her fear. Or maybe the pauses that seemed too long, as if she were contemplating every word. I decided to investigate myself. That night, I took a small mirror and positioned it so I could see the doll without getting out of bed. Lying under the blanket, I watched. The doll was moving. Its head turned back towards me, and then it slowly raised its hand. My breathing became erratic. I felt my heart racing in my chest as if it were trying to escape. Cold sweat covered my entire body, and my legs felt glued to the floor. Fear paralyzed me, but I couldn't take my eyes off its empty eye sockets, which seemed to pierce right through me. I could no longer endure it. I jumped out of bed and ran to my grandmother. When I told her what I'd seen, she shook her head and said it was just my childhood fears. But in her eyes, I noticed something strange, as if she herself was afraid of that doll. The next day, I insisted that we get rid of it. Grandma reluctantly agreed. We took the doll and buried it in the forest, far away from the house. As I walked back, I felt as if someone was watching us. Since then, I have never seen that doll again. But sometimes at night, even as an adult, I wake up feeling observed. And in the dim moonlight, I feel as if I can see a familiar figure in the corner of my room. Its outline is barely discernible, but I feel the gaze of those empty eye sockets piercing through me. The room becomes stifling, and I find myself unable to move. The familiar faint smell of dampness and decay fills the air, and I realize that perhaps it never left me.